All right, we're recording to this computer. Hope there's enough space. All right, so I would like to welcome and thank you guys for coming out to the first part of the language meetup series called Languages of Long Branch. The series aims to inspire interest in languages and to strengthen unity and solidarity in Long Branch beyond our linguistic barriers. So, to introduce myself, my name is Anna Sweeney. I'm a library assistant at the Long Branch Free Public Library. I am a second and third generation Italian American through my mother and father, respectively. Right now, I only speak English, but I have a keen interest on Iberian languages like Gallego, Portuguese, and I've been studying Brazilian Portuguese for a very long time. I can at least read it at this point. So, would you guys like to be introduced yet?
Go for it.
Okay, I'm gonna go in alphabetical order. So, Roberto Ferragina, or Rob, was born and raised in Long Branch, New Jersey. He is the son of immigrants who immigrated to Long Branch from Calabria, Italy. He grew up in a bilingual home and has traveled back and forth to Italy most of his life to visit family. He is very active with the local Italian American community, is a member of the Figli di Colombo Society, and is currently a board member and past president of the Amerigo Vespucci Society of Long Branch. He is the current assistant director of community and economic development for the city of Long Branch and is the current president of the Long Branch Free Public Library Board of Trustees. So I wonder if I can highlight. So next is Lixanya Lucas. Lixanya is a first-generation Mexican-American born and raised in Long Branch and the oldest of three sisters. After high school, she attended Monmouth University, where she received her bachelor's in business administration with a concentration in finance and a minor in Italian. While in college, she worked at the Long Branch Free Public Library as a federal work-study student, and upon graduation, she became a library assistant and later transitioned to the accounts payable position. In early 2020, Lixanya moved to Michigan and is currently an accounting analyst at Thoroughbred Fulfillment. Elizabeth Peterson, who's not here right now, Betty was born and raised in Monmouth County and now calls Long Branch home with her son Kai, who goes to Gregory School. She's been passionate about languages and communicating ideas in spoken written word for as long as she can remember. Betty loves getting to know people in her community, but volunteering with local nonprofits, as well as getting to know small business owners around the country in her marketing role as U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Mario Vieira. Mario Vieira is City Council President and member of the City Council. He was born in Portugal and moved to the U.S. with his family at the age of 11. Mario stays connected to the Portuguese community by being an active member and ex-president of the Long Branch Portuguese Club. By day, he is a Mason. By trade, he is a Mason by trade and is married with 2 children. Anna Wells works in the Elbron Branch Library as an assistant librarian. She learned English as a second language in Russia. She used to work as a geophysicist in the oil industry before she moved to New Jersey. Her former occupation required English language knowledge in order to read professional literature, use specialized software, and participate in international conferences. Besides reading books, one of her favorite things to do is traveling, which is another reason she learned a second language. She enjoys her work in a library, and she is currently studying for a librarian degree at Rutgers University. So, welcome, guys.
Thank you.
I'm gonna pull up a few questions to ask you guys. One second. So I'm gonna start with Mario. Like, when did you consider yourself and others that were bilingual, like, to be fluent in a new language? Like, at what point did you feel confident?
About, tell you the truth, about a year and a half into,
Into
that's
it?
when I started. And once I became a resident in 1975, to about a year and a half when I came in, I felt like like I started to fit in. Started getting some friends, started going out and play with them,
Mm-hmm.
and they started inviting me over to their houses. So it took me a good year and a half to get comfortable. Back then it was a little harder for us to learn the language because we didn't have the bilingual that we have today. So we got thrown into the basket, as we call it, into the bunch. And you had one choice: you learn or you don't learn. So we had to learn. So
Yeah,
it took me about a year and a half to get comfortable about that.
that can be a huge motivator, the fact that there's no other way out.
No, definitely. I think I went to Anastasia School, which is now Morris School, my first school, and I think it was only made by a handful of people that spoke Spanish. Portuguese, forget it. So we were automatically combined with the Spanish people that we understood a few words, but there wasn't many. So it was quick motivated.
Is that pretty much the experience for most people? And this is kind of stretching the conversation to everyone else. Like, was it like a almost do or die situation where you had to learn or you had to acclimate?
Back then, yes.
Yeah.
Back then, in the 1970s, very little Portuguese families here. Spanish families, those are quite a few, but in school, we didn't have the bilingual. Yeah, they were just starting. After when I got my full year in school, they start taking us out to go to a special bilingual school, but I was already a year into it. And that's what the bilingual was just starting. But my first week, I had no clue what was going on. I got thrown into a classroom. Nobody spoke. Everybody was English, just English. And then you start picking up things quick that way. You know what I mean? Believe it or not, it's hard in the beginning, but you pick it up real quick. You have no choice.
Yeah, like a learning curve.
There you go.
Would you rather have it the way that you had it then versus now?
Me, I would rather have it like I had it then. I
Yeah.
had no choice because I'm speaking to some kids these days, and they're here like 4 or 5 years already, and they're still in those bilingual classes. And if they had the one tough year, a real tough one, they shouldn't even be in those bilingual classes. They should be in a normal class, like I was put in, and after 1 year and a half, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to me personally, I think if you get thrown into that position, you have no choice but get out of it. And that's an experience that you have to learn a lot quicker.
Yeah. I've heard of a phenomenon, like a linguistic bubble almost, that isolates people. It seems like it would be more beneficial, but it's actually harmful for learning language. Because people naturally we don't want to get out of our comfort zone. So we're gonna talk to people that we already know, that already know our language. And it could be sometimes embarrassing to get things wrong. So having a linguistic bubble actually would be harmful because then you don't try it. You don't actually work on your skills.
Correct. I never lost my language because the minute I walk into my house, my parents had a rule. There's one rule is you only speak Portuguese in this house. So we maintain both of those languages very well.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that rule with other people that speak other languages before. So, let me see. I would like to ask Anya this question because you had to learn at an older age. Want to know like what barriers were in the way at the time of learning your language, even going from basic English to more professional English, which is total different domain. What barriers did you have, and how did you get through them?
Oh, it's an interesting question. It's hard to explain when you live not in a English-speaking society. You kind of can learn words, can start to read things, but you can't communicate. So it was much easier to read technical books rather than talking with other people. And actually, I started to learn English in my school, but it was when I was like 9 or 10 years old, and it depends on the teacher. So all school, we tried to learn language, no success. I knew words and I could read something, but not a lot. Then same thing in my university. We learned a lot of technical words, but believe me, I can't pronounce any long phrases at all. So,
Yeah.
and then finally, when I graduated, I just hired a very professional tutor. And when you have a really good tutor, everything became way easier because the grammar in Russian language and in English, how you construct phrases, sentences, they're way different.
Mhm.
And unless you have this scheme in your head, you can't do it right. And when you live not in English speaking community, you can't even realize that anything you can tell other guys, they might not understand you, even if you have a certain words.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn now because it's not easy.
No, I'm sure. Your language out of all of the languages I've invited is actually the farthest from English, and that's why I am seriously inspired by you and very curious to see how you have been
Oh,
working
thank you.
out these things.
Yeah, it's just little by little. And at first, when I started to come to United States, there were several years I was listening to the radio, watching TV, and it was even hard to understand at the beginning
Mhm.
because everything was so quick, you can't catch it up.
Yeah.
But it just took a long time, and little by little you learn it. If you want, you have to push yourself.
Yeah.
But it's way easier. When I moved here, it became way easier because the less you speak your own language, the more you be able to speak English.
True.
It's like, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Like our first attendee said that when you're thrown in the pot and you have to speak,
Yeah. Exactly.
it works better.
So how much time did it take you to learn how to read, since that was like the first thing that you had to do and you were coming from a different script?
Oh, actually, it wasn't that hard because, as I said, we learned it in school.
Mhm.
So all of the basic rules, alphabet and such, from your childhood, it's easier to learn during your childhood.
Mhm.
And later, just more knowledge were added to that.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like, it wasn't completely different alphabet because, believe it or not, in Russia, we use Latin alphabet a lot. And it wasn't like something unknown. And we had cartoons. I remember on TV, we had some BBC cartoons where they taught us some English words and other things. And in Russia at that time, we learned British English, not
Okay.
American one. And even now, some words I write, the first thing I write would be like British guys are writing like color.
Mhm.
So making some mistakes in American way.
Yeah. I mean, our language here in the United States had transformed because of printing, where they got rid of certain unnecessary letters in order to get less letters per page in order to make it cheaper. So
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah,
Never knew that. I thought it was just to simplify it to everybody because there are so many people are coming from
Yeah.
all over the world.
I
didn't
like
know
the
that.
fact that it's a little simpler. Like Italian is always like pretty easy to understand in pronunciation because it's exactly what you see there. Whereas like English is not so much, or and definitely not French.
Oh yeah, and not German.
So I am going to ask all of you, like, what languages do you wish you knew? And I'm gonna start in alphabetical order with Rob. Like, what's one or two languages you wish you knew?
Believe it or not, I wish I knew Japanese.
Yeah, that is incredibly hard.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when I was in undergraduate school, I have one of my degrees is in history, and I truly enjoyed Japanese history, and I wish that I had learned the language. I think it's a very interesting language. It's a very interesting history. The other one would be Latin, which is the root language of the Romance languages.
Mhm.
Italian, French, Portuguese, Spanish, Romanian. Those are all part of the Romance languages that have a Latin base. So if you speak any one of those properly, you can understand a lot of the other ones if they're spoken properly. So while I'm fairly fluent in Italian, I wouldn't say I'm 100% fluent, but while I'm fairly fluent, if I was fluent in Latin, I would be able to speak those other languages fluently because it's the root. So I would say Japanese and Latin for me.
Okay, Lixanya.
So the two languages I wish I knew were one, I wish I knew Italian again. I knew it at one point back when I was in college and I studied it, and I studied abroad in Italy. Believe it or not, spending 3 months and a half in Italy, I could speak to everyone over there. It's amazing. Just putting yourself in that situation, you learn so much. Now being here and not speaking it, not really practicing it, definitely lost a lot of it. So I wish I could get that back. And French, that's one language that I've always really liked. And yeah, I wish I knew French.
Yeah, it's a pretty language. Everybody
It
loves
is.
French. Mario?
It's funny that you just said French because that was my word. That was the one I wanted to say. French, coming from Portugal, we always had neighbors that migrated to French because it was close to Portugal, and they would come back. And I was very young, and I see them speaking that language, and they do the R's and everything real heavy to it. And I say, what are they saying? And I go back and I think about it, and I say, wow, if you really listen closely, it's like Rob said, it's like a Latin word. It's like almost like a Portuguese and Italian mixed together. So I always wanted to learn that French because of that word. And my second language was I always wanted to learn Spanish when I came to this country. And I pretty much accomplished that because I speak Spanish fluently right now. I've had worked with a lot of Spanish speaking people from South America, and I still do. And I work with them. I speak mostly all Spanish. Actually, I speak more Spanish than I do Portuguese. These days in the construction field out there, we have more Spanish speaking employees than we do Portuguese these days. So Spanish was the other one that I picked up real quick. That was easier for me. I took it in high school because I said that's an easy grade for me because it's almost like Portuguese. So I always felt like I was cheating in a way, but that was easy grade. So I learned that language, Spanish, pretty well too.
Okay. Anya?
I would like to learn Spanish for sure, for many reasons. But I have no idea whether it's going to happen because I'm not a big language person. Well, and the next language, I don't know. I like Italian, I like French, I like German. So
Given
any
that,
of them.
yeah, given that you guys have all gone through the process of learning another language, it's actually easier to kind of get through some of the things that you had to learn how to before. Language learning is supposed to be a skill in itself, more than just knowing how to speak, but knowing how to learn. But let's see. Oh, I have a really interesting topic. I would like to know if you've ever dreamed in another language other than English, and like when you moved, did you end up start having English dreams more? Whoever would like to hop in, you can go ahead.
I'll pop in. My first 4 years, I was a kid, was all Portuguese. I hate to say, but I kept dreaming, like, you know, you get to miss back home and you dream about it a little bit, and you're still in that culture. You know, the first 5, 6 years, you're still into that culture. So your dreams will come as Portuguese. Then as you get involved, as you start to get, you know, as you have your new American languages here and your new friends and everything. And I hate to say it, but after that, I dreamt no more about Portuguese. All of my is English right now. What's going on, you know? So basically now it's all English.
Yeah, I can. Oh, sorry, Rob. Are you gonna go?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. It's funny because I feel like when other people know that you speak multiple languages, the first questions are, "What languages do you think in? What language do you dream in?" I feel that, yeah, I go back and forth. Like if I'm going to say something in Spanish, I'm gonna think in Spanish. I'm going to. If my dreams have to do with my parents, maybe in my dreams I'm speaking Spanish. If they have to do with my friends, in my dream I'm speaking English. So yeah, I think that I go back and forth. It's almost second nature, depending on who I'm interacting with and what the topic is or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think both.
Kind of like what you remember speaking in for a certain situation.
Yeah.
I could tell you, for me, you know, I was born here, and my native language is English. But I could tell you, I saw that question when you had sent us the questions via email, and I thought about it quite a bit. When I dream of relatives, and I've been going back and forth to Italy my entire life since I was a child, and when I dream of my relatives there, they're speaking in Italian. When I dream of some of the relatives I have here who were born there who only speak Italian, I grew up communicating with them in Italian, they're speaking Italian in my dreams, but I'm speaking English. And when I asked my parents the same question, my father, who really doesn't speak English very well at all, thinks and dreams in Italian. And my mother, who's bilingual, she came here when she was 14. She said it depends on the dream, and it depends on what's going on in the dream and who's in the dream. So, you know, I think it varies.
I definitely dream in Russian. I still think in Russian, so I translate everything. But sometimes the more I live here, and I'm here for the 6 years, it's coming to be like Runglish. Some words in Russian, some words in English. The easier words are in English, the harder in Russian.
Does it have like the same sentence structure or is that changed too?
Sentence structure is Russian. Even now, when I have to write for my school, all of the paperwork and such, I force myself to reconstruct phrases, because in Russian language, it doesn't matter the how words are following each other. You can put them in various ways
Yeah.
in the sentence, not like straight order in English.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting question, because I know that in most Latin-based languages, the noun and the verb are flipped compared to English-based languages. And so if you speak, Italian, Spanish, French, etc., and you're speaking English, you would say, that the red car, and in Latin, it's generally the opposite.
Opposite.
Right? So, the car is red, so, it's weird because it affects the way you think, I think. You start thinking a little bit differently because you're processing the words differently in your head, so it's interesting.
Yeah. Being that I was learning a language, I started picking up on certain abnormalities in English, times where like red wouldn't come before the car. I can't think of anything right now, but I was gonna ask you guys, what cognates, things that sound like English, persist in your language? And this isn't like a loan word like television or YouTube or something like that, something that comes from the same base. Do you guys know of any words?
Well, basically, there's a lot of words that basically contain, like you just mentioned, television, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the banana is worldwide, that. Banana is a banana, you know what I mean? Everywhere you go. So there's quite a few words, I'm not really thinking which ones they are by now, but there's quite a few, believe it or not, out there. And it's like, it's almost like Italian, like Rob, you can see like a television, it's almost a Spanish, Brazilian, French,
Yes.
English, it's almost the same thing all over where you go.
Yeah. I think when it comes to certain things, like when the names of flowers and plants, they all have, for the most part, Latin roots, right? But when you get into items, like Mario was saying, the television is a perfect example. In Italian, televisione, radio, radio. It's the same root word. With the vowels might be altered a little bit. So whether it's Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, at least with the Latin-based languages, there's a lot of words. Bicycle. In Italian, it's bicicletta, which doesn't sound like bicycle, but when you spell it out, bicycle and bicicletta, it looks almost the same. You could tell they're basically the same root word. So there's quite a bit of similarities.
It's funny that you mentioned radio. The Portuguese even spells it the same, radio. You just pronounce it wrong, radio.
Right, it's the same thing in Italian. It's spelled the same exact.
You just use the r instead of the r. That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's right.
In Russian, it's radio.
The same thing, yeah.
Yeah. We have a lot of words from all of the languages. And for the past few years, a lot of words like community, it also started to come to Russian language, especially among the younger population, because everybody are on the internet watching different YouTube videos, TikTok videos, everything, and catching up words from there. So Russian youngsters, they have their own language and it's based on English. So if you know English, you can understand them.
What's
of course,
interesting,
they modify.
I read an article once which was really interesting about language and how each language, doesn't matter if it's Italian, Portuguese, Russian, Spanish, doesn't matter what it is, has certain words that reflect an emotion or a feeling that other languages just don't have. And it's one of the advantages of being bilingual because your brain can actually understand that feeling or that emotion because there's a word associated to it and you can't translate it to another language. And which I always thought was really interesting because it definitely exists in Italian, and I know it, according to the article, exists in every language. You know, there's just certain emotions or feelings or just a certain feeling that can be articulated in some word that just has never been translated, so to speak, for lack of a better word, you know. So I always found that quite interesting. Then there's modern words that we as Americans invent, so to speak, that just get adopted by the rest of the world, you know, or parts of the world. I mean, I remember I going to Italy one time, one of my many trips, and they said something, and I asked them, I said, say that again? And they were telling me how somebody came to watch their children, and they were saying babysitter, but in Italian, there's no word for babysitter. So they use the American word babysitter. And of course, it sounds a little funny the way they pronounce it because they say babysitter. And, you know, and I'm thinking to myself, why can't you just create a word that just means babysitter? But they didn't. And so all throughout Italy, that's what the word that they use, which I thought was pretty funny. But and I'm assuming, it's just an assumption that exists at some level in other languages where they just adopt an American word.
Definitely. Even just here, people, like, for example, first generation, second generation, you know, kids, they're saying things like, instead of estacionamiento, which is parking in Spanish, they're saying parqueando. It's just, you're changing the English word and just making it kind of Spanish. And that's like the norm now. Everybody will understand parqueando. And now even like when I go to Mexico, maybe they might not in the beginning get what I'm saying, but eventually they'll know. And I feel like even there, they're starting to use words that are just made up Spanish words. But it's becoming the new normal.
You're absolutely right. We use them too.
Mm-hmm.
They say autostrada, now they say the parkway. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Do you guys know of a word that you can't quite translate into English? Or, you know, for instance, my favorite in learning Portuguese is saudade.
Saudade.
Yeah.
You miss it, huh? It's funny.
Yeah.
There's a lot of words out there. Rob just ran one that was amazing. He said babysitter. If you ask me how to say babysitter in Portuguese, I wouldn't know how, because I never experienced that. We never had that word babysitter when I was small, and that's a perfect word because what do I say? I can explain it in Portuguese, but to translate it into one word, I wouldn't know how to do that, because we didn't believe in babysitting. Nobody used babysitting in the old days. We all worked the farms, and your older brothers and sisters are taking care of you. You know what I mean? So nobody really worked the factories, because I come from a poor town. So I wouldn't know what the word babysitter was, or how to translate it in Portuguese, because I never used that word. You know what I mean? So that's a perfect example. Thank you, Rob.
In Russian, we have an old word. It's nyanya, but it's more like the female who not only babysitting, but she's like working with that kid, teaching that kid. So it's like mother substitute. That will be nyanya. And I don't know, it's a little bit similar to babysitting, but in some ways it's a little more than just babysitting. But yeah, in Russia, we usually right now using babysitter. That's how we pronounce it.
Excuse me. If you guys have any questions for each other, or anybody that's watching would like to ask, you can go ahead.
I like this. Sonny, how do you say babysitter in Spanish?
I guess while thinking about it, the best I could come up with was niñera, which is just, or like just.
I know Spanish pretty much fluently, and I don't know, but I know how to say it in Brazilian. I don't know if you call it Portuguese, they call it baba. I
Yeah,
don't know where they
no,
get that from, but they
I
call
don't
over here in Palm Branch. Every time we talk to the Brazilians or the Portuguese speaking Brazilians, and they says, "Oh, my baba this, my baba that," and I to find out my wife is a paraprofessional at the school, and she's the one. You know what the baba is? No, that's a babysitter. So
Oh
that's
my
something
goodness.
I was just curious. I was just curious to see how you say it in Spanish, in Mexican. That's all.
In Russian, we have baba, but baba is female.
Okay.
And it's like, it's not completely rude, but it's more about people who work in the field, like farmers.
Yeah.
So it will be baba, but the same word. I'm guessing maybe it's the same root everywhere.
Yeah. When I worked the farms, which where I was raised at, if you're small, you get to carry in a little carriage, you get put under the tree while your mom and dad are working the farms. And if you're big enough, you're working the farms. If you can walk, you're already picking up potatoes or something. So that's where our babysitters came from.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you something that's interesting, you know, like, you know, my family comes from way down southern Italy. And as I mentioned earlier, South Italy has so many influences from Greece and Spain primarily, as well as an Arab influence as well. And growing up, I remember my grandfather, whenever he would ask for a pencil, he would say lápiz. Lápiz is Spanish, right? As far as I know. Because in Italian, pencil is matita. So,
Wow.
and I always wondered as a child, why didn't he ever call the pencil matita? Why did he always call it lápiz?
Lápiz.
And probably because when he was a child, there was so much of Spanish influence down where we were from, because we're from way down south, that's the word that they used. But I can guarantee up north, no one probably ever used the word lápiz because the Spanish influence didn't go up northern Italy. So it's interesting how, you know, even within a language, different regions can speak different things. So I always found that quite interesting.
It happens. My wife's got from the northern part, I'm from the central, and then we have a lot of things of different words. You know what I mean? You know, a good example is if you say in leftovers, right? Her town, my town, it says sobra. That means leftovers. And her town, it says cresceu. Cresceu, that means it grew. You know what I mean? So I says, what do you mean? I tease my mother all the time. She says, what do you mean cresceu? It grew. Yeah, because, you know, you ate already, you still have some. No, it's sobra, it means leftover. So we always go back with our argument. Just a different example, part of different towns, different words.
And with Spanish, you have that, like, for example, in Mexico, different regions in Mexico will have their own, the same thing, you know, words meaning, you know, other things for separate parts of the country. But then you look at Spanish and then you think of Central and South America all speak Spanish, but the vocabulary could be very different. I could say something in Spanish that to somebody in, I don't know, Guatemala or Paraguay might mean something completely different. So yeah.
And forget about the Spanish from Spain.
Oh yeah, and then there's Spanish from Spain, completely different over there as well.
Yeah, the Spanish from Spain is very similar to the Portuguese because they're neighbors there.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that, like, I noticed words in European Spanish resemble the ones in European Portuguese, like automobile. And even in England, they use the word automobile more than saying car, like we do in the Americas.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And even, for example, Spanish in Argentina, I guess it's depending, like, you know, who, you know, arrived where, but Argentina, I feel like they speak closer to the Spanish in Spain versus Spanish in South America, Central America. So yeah, you could speak the same language, but there's different words that people are using, or Yeah.
We use, that's a perfect example, because if you, the Portuguese language is one of the 7th most spoken language, I think it is. If you go to Angola, Africa, Mozambique, the Portuguese they speak there is, we understand their Portuguese better than we do Brazil's.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Believe it or not. Brazil is such a bigger country that they change so much stuff, while the other countries are a little smaller, they maintain that tradition of the Portuguese. So if I'm going to listen to somebody from Angola speak Portuguese, they speak it almost exactly like us. And then you go to Brazil, like we said, sometimes we have a tough time understanding them, and they're speaking the same language as us. Now you mentioned the different countries, you're absolutely right.
That's so interesting. In Russian language, we don't have that because maybe because all of us learn Russian in schools using the same program. So in different part of Russia, they might have a little bit different words, but overall it's the same language. And recently I watched a video about Russians who moved from Russia probably a century ago to Argentina, by the way. I never knew about that. There were like certain branch of Russian Orthodox Church, and they preserved the old Russian language there in Argentina. It's
Wow.
so funny to listen to that language because it was modified on the mainland. And if you read old books, you can read those words that they're using now. So for me, it was just amazing. It was like the window to our past, how it's supposed to be back then time.
Lisa had a question.
Hi, Anna. No, I was more of a comment that even among English-speaking countries, US, England, Australia, Canada, there are differences in the languages, different words. And even in the US, for example, this is the only one I could think of off the top of my head, but regional differences where we say soda and
They
then
say pop.
Yeah.
they say pop.
I know that now, Lisa. I can attest to that.
I've been to London, and you know, it wasn't that easy to understand the English speakers, and I have a pretty good ear for accents, and I found it difficult, and we're all speaking English, so I think it's all very interesting.
There
There's a-
is another one between garage and carport.
Yeah, but I always found it interesting. I used to travel all across the country for over 20 years, including Canada. But in the US, like we call them subs here, sub sandwich. You go to New England, they're called grinders. In other parts of the country, they're called heroes. Some other parts of the country, they're called hoagies. You know, so you take the same sandwich, and depending on where you are in the US, you know, it's called something different. And Lisa's right. Like if you go to the Midwest, especially Chicago, they don't call it soda, they call it pop. You ask for a soda, and they think you're talking about like carbonated water, you know. So I always found that really, really interesting. But even like if you go to Canada, I used to travel to Canada on a weekly basis, and the Quebec province, the primary language is French. And you walk into the restaurants, and the menus are French for the most part, and the hotels, when you walk in, they greet you in French, and then once they hear you speak English, they switch. But their primary language is French Canadian, and they speak English with a French Canadian accent, not vice versa. So I always found, you know, that is even within countries, you know, you find those the dialect differences, language differences. You know, it's quite extraordinary.
Just imagine being a student there. You got to learn both languages.
That's right. That's right.
Funny, in Quebec, I think I got family there. They got to learn both languages. But once you're outside of Quebec, you don't have to. You just have to learn the English.
That's correct.
I think that's how they operate.
That's correct. Exactly.
Kind of like how Switzerland has 3 official languages. It's on the border of Italy and France and another country which I have forgotten, but they have languages that are similar to all the countries around them.
Wow. Pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Also in Quebec, don't they want to, every so often, they'll want to secede?
Correct. They've
And
tried it.
They've tried, and I think the same in Spain, right? Where they have Catalan.
That's correct.
Catalan. Yeah.
It seems like your identity is very much tied to the language you speak, more so than maybe the overall country that you're living in.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they haven't succeeded yet in Canada, but they've tried a few times, I think through a referendum, if I'm not mistaken, and it didn't go through in the end, but it's an effort. Yep.
I know Spain, the Catalonia was very close last year. Very close in this epidemic hit. I don't know what happened afterwards, but I know they were very close to be separated.
Yeah.
All right.
Did you guys have any like recommendations to resources that a person could use to learn languages?
I think Mario hit it right on the dot. And actually, someone else mentioned it. I forget who. But if you're there, there's nothing that, in my opinion, helps you learn another language than being in the country. Like if I go, let's say I go to, Spain or Mexico, and I'm there for 2 months, I'll learn more Spanish than I would if I studied it for 4 years. And I think it's just your mind forces you to absorb the language. And also the other element is it's all around you. You're hearing it from the second you wake up to the second you go to bed. It's on TV. It's people talking next to you. It's people talking to you. It's in the signs, visually. I think that's the best way a person could learn is you just throw them in the environment. The next best way would be you make it a major priority and you just start taking courses and lessons and you do that route. But I think the best way is, I never took Italian courses. I grew up with it in my home and we spoke it. And, when I went to college, I started taking courses. And, I was obviously ahead of everybody else because I had a base of it. And, I started to learn some words that were more grammatically correct than some of the slang that I had grown up with. But especially as a child, if you're in that environment, you're in another country, because as a child, you absorb it so much faster than an adult. Your mind works differently. Your vocal cords work differently when you're a child. They're still soft. They can still bend. But you can still learn a language when you're an adult.
What I suggest, if you're here in Long Branch, if you're listening, that the best thing is when you're out there, even if you're working with your friends or some, practice the language. Don't, for me, I came home, I had no choice. That's the language we had to speak at home. My parents, that's parents' rule, But if you're an adult and you're trying to speak the language, when you're out there, even at home with your kids or something like that, use the English language. Instead of asking for it in a different language, ask it in English. If you want a spoon, don't say colher. Hey, can I have a spoon or something like that? Use that language. As you go into the stores, you try to use it. Don't be ashamed of you're not pronouncing it right, because in a couple of days, those people don't know who you are, who they are. You know what I mean? So don't be ashamed. That's what I keep telling people. Where the pronunciation is there, that's how you're going to learn. You know what I mean? That's because you're ashamed. Oh, I don't speak it that well. Don't be ashamed because you don't speak it. That's why you're doing it. You're practicing, and use that in your advantage, because that's what we get from these days. At work sometimes I got guys that don't speak English, and I make them ask me stuff in English. Listen, how are you going to learn if you're not going to learn? So you got to ask me. Don't ask me in Spanish because I understand, or in Portuguese or in a different language. Ask me in English. You know what I mean? I'll try to do the same thing and put it in English. When I want them to do something, I'll tell them in English because I want them to learn. You know what I mean? So don't be ashamed because you don't pronounce it right. Listen, I've been in this country for 40 years and I still don't pronounce it right. So don't be ashamed. Just use that language and use it to your advantage.
And just to piggyback off of that, I also agree that it's just you have to dive right in and just do it. You have to practice it. You have to speak it. You have to read it, watch TV in whatever language you're trying to learn. And definitely a lot of people hold back because they're embarrassed that they're not saying things correctly, or like they don't maybe know the exact word. But one thing that I've learned is that people are very willing to teach you. They appreciate it when you even try a little bit. Like they do not care if you say it wrong. They want to know that you're trying, and they're going to help you with whatever language you're learning. They're going to correct you. You know, they're going to tell you you're doing a great job. And you know, I think that's definitely the best thing is just to speak it, just try it. That's really the one biggest thing. When also growing, I knew Spanish from home because that's what my parents spoke. So I've known that language since I was little. But then in college, learning Italian, I only took basic Italian, so Italian level 1 while in college, and then traveled to Italy for 3 months. That Italian level 1 was like nothing. I did not even need it because being there, you just pick it up. I knew the very basics, and then from there it was just like a stepping off point because I had no other choice but to speak it. And a lot of people there actually spoke English, but I forced myself to speak to them in Italian because that was the only way I was going to learn, and I did. So definitely, just that's the biggest piece of advice. Just do it. Just talk, because that's the only way you're going to learn.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that.
That's correct.
I found that to be helpful when I traveled in Portugal. I had only been there for a week. Once I got to my destination, there was a lot less English speakers, and I was tempted to have my friend help me say it, but I really tried my best to do it, and they were like you guys said, like they're more than happy to see that you're actually trying. They like respect things.
Actually, yeah, they will help you, and they're proud that you're trying to. That's the top priority. While they come here and they don't come and speak English, they're expecting us to speak English for them. You know what I mean? So you're trying your language, you're trying their language, and they're happy to see that. They're very happy to see that.
So given not everybody are they're not able to travel all the time, where in Long Branch can you find speakers of your language if you wanted to learn?
The real question is where do you not? Long Branch is so diverse that, I mean, if you want to learn Portuguese, you have a million places to go to. If you want to learn Spanish, you have a million places to go to. Just down Broadway alone, pick a spot, go right inside and speak it. Like you're gonna, Italian also right on Broadway. I think the owner of Bell Liquors is speaks Italian. I know because I met him at the library and we were talking for a little bit. So I'm telling you, just right down Broadway, pick a spot. You'll definitely find somebody.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I like that.
Right. You know, Broadway is it's the biggest artery in Long Branch. You speak every language. You go to Marbella, you got the restaurant Portuguese right there.
Yep.
They speak all language. You go to Port do Sol, you got all the speakers. You go down the street, you got the Portuguese club. They speak the main language. And then the Spanish, the same thing. You got all the little casitas, you know, the little thrift shops. They all speak Spanish. And you got all the Mexican restaurants on Broadway. I'm telling you, Broadway, you start from where West Long Branch starts all the way to the beach. You got everything. Maybe not in Russia, right?
Actually, usually I hear Russian on the Broadwalk. There are usually at least a couple of pair of people who speak Russian. That I know for sure that
There's a tall guy that walks the boardwalk. I think he's Russian. I say, guys.
I'm sorry?
A tall guy with curly blonde hair, pretty tall. He's like over 6 foot. He's Russian. He always says hi to me every morning when I walk.
Yeah, I think
okay.
The beach gets a lot of people from Russia, Ukraine, from all over there. So I mean, even Russian in the summertime, go to the boardwalk. Somebody's gonna speak it.
Yeah. There are a couple of adult senior centers where a lot of Russian speakers live. And I was completely not in shock, but very surprised when once I visited some of my friends in the that big hospital, and I would never say that I will meet a Russian nurse and a Russian doctor there, Russian speakers, not Russian, but people who can speak Russian. And later I learned that actually there are a whole bunch of staff who can speak Russian and help out. So yeah, they're just hiding.
When I grew up, there were a lot more people in Long Branch speaking Italian than there are today. There were a tremendous amount of Italian immigrants in Long Branch and Italian neighborhoods. You know, the Holy Trinity Church was built by, you know, Italians, and that entire community around Holy Trinity, all the way extending to High Street, was just all Italian immigrants or descendants of Italian immigrants. When I was a kid, the barbershops, for the most part, most of them were owned by Italian immigrants. You had Frank Penta uptown, you had Frank Gulli downtown, you had Orfeo in West End. Those were all Italian immigrants. All three of them have passed away since.
You forgot Dan Breezy.
And Dan Breezy, that's right.
That's why he's blue, my.
That's right. And you know, you had so much, you know, you went to so many different places, at least I did when I was a kid in Long Branch, that you heard the Italian language. You had, you know, Baldanzas, you had Mazzacos, you had Valentino's, both Valentino locations, Broadway and the one next to Holy Trinity. You had Ocean View Bakery. You had, you know, Holy Trinity Church in and of itself. You know, then you had Italian American organizations. You had the American Vespucci Society, the Figli di Colombo, you have IAMA, you know, and the list goes on and on and on. Most of those stores that I mentioned are no longer in existence. The Italian societies are still around, but they're more Italian Americans versus Italian immigrants these days. But you still hear the Italian language, just like, you know, like today you see a tremendous amount of Spanish, Portuguese, and Brazilian stores and restaurants. That's how it was when the Italians were here, and down the road from now 20, 30, 40 years down the road from now, you might see other ethnicities emerging. And that's one of the beautiful things about Long Branch. It has been a melting pot for a very long time and continues to be. I see that as one of our strengths as a community. It's the vast diversity that we have.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think that that's definitely a huge plus for Long Branch. You have all these languages, all these cultures, all these different restaurants. You can try the different food. You appreciate the world a lot when you have that. Where I live now, there's definitely way less of that. And
really?
I crave Portuguese food. I can't find it anywhere. So yeah, no, I think that's definitely a big plus for Long Branch, all the diversity.
Yeah, I like it more here. I would probably be more uncomfortable in other places because not only Long Branch, but in New Jersey, there are so many different people all together that it's, you know, when you're coming from completely different world, you're adjusting better because you can find people with whom you can speak your own language, you can find your own cuisine, and like add it to your new world, something from your previous world. So. We
I'll
can
just say,
hear you.
what's the one place where everyone can come together in Long
Yeah.
Branch?
The library.
Bye.
There.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right. That's right, the library.
You
Yes.
can get movies there that are in different languages if you wanted to. We even have Russian and Thai.
Is the movie theater open yet or no?
Not yet.
Not yet because of COVID. Yeah.
I was going to also kind of advertise some of the things that we have at the library and some of the things that I've use to at least learn how to read Portuguese. And Duolingo was the first thing. I was kind of crazy about that. I was like religiously doing it every single day. But the problem is if you don't have somebody to talk to, or if you're really not putting yourself out there, you're never going to get the ear for it. And that's my biggest problem. There is other apps, including the Ling app, because they have other languages, including Thai. There is Busu. There is, I had seen another app that actually teaches you Spanish or French via videos where they give you subtitles and they word by word help you learn what the people in the show was saying, and that's called Lingo Pi. I also know that we have Rosetta Stone for all the patrons. You could pick the language that you want to learn. Yeah, that is actually a huge plus because unlike Duolingo, they don't have a heart system where if you make 3 mistakes, now you're blocked out for the rest of the day. You can complete as many courses as you want. We also have Mango Languages, which is not my favorite, but still resourceful. And the fact that we have so many different movies, people may find that having something interesting to actually learn the language in could be helpful. So you could check out things at the library to help you out.
Have you ever experienced Babbel?
What was that?
Babbel? Isn't there another one called Babbel?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I heard that one was pretty good. I don't have experience, but
I haven't used it either.
yeah.
I've been
Yes.
very into Duolingo, but it's starting to bother me how they want to like get more money. And
Yeah.
when I first started learning, the words were actually different from what they are now in the Portuguese course. And when I would literally word by word tell a Portuguese speaking person what I had learned in there, they'd be like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it makes you wonder.
Yeah. Well, you can always call me and read a book and I'll tell you how good you are.
Yeah, I have a friend who has a tattoo in Portuguese and
Uh-huh.
then in English on the other side.
Oh,
And she was like, wait, I have to test you. So she covers up her English arm and she exposes her Portuguese arm. She's like, read this. And I did, and she was like, good job.
there you go.
It's the only way I know of progress. But if I were to talk to somebody, regardless, I can't understand anything they're saying. I also find it very hard to hear what do you call it? Like accents to like in
Yeah.
English. So hearing is not a strong suit for me in general. But yeah,
Next time you go, instead of going for a week, you got to go for 2 months.
yeah, I would love that. It was an excellent experience. All right. I am going to wrap things up. If you have anything else to add, you can. But I would like to thank you guys for all coming out. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome anytime.
My pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
So,
You're
Anna,
welcome.
that-
Thank you, Anna.
yes.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Nice
Bye-bye.
to meet you all.
you.
Nice to
Same
meet you,
here. It was good
Lixanya,
meeting
again.
y'all.
Lixanya, good luck. Good to see you
Thank
again.
you.
Good to
Bye-bye,
see
thanks.
you. Yeah.
Sonia, Anna, it was
All right.
good meeting you. Bye-bye.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye-bye.
Great
Thank
job.
you.
Oh, Lixanya is here? No.
Ciao.
Okay.
I would like to dedicate this part of the series to a friend who had passed away in December. He was and still is my inspiration to learn languages and to fight for the rights of Latino workers. And we would not be here today if it weren't for him. So.